So hello, my friend. We're back.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah,
I'm so
hello.
happy that you suggested that we should meet because since the last interview we have been writing back and forth, and I know you have been speaking with Vince because you have had an absolutely horrendous time, and I really, I really thought it would be great, you know, to have an interview and talk about where you're at right now because you feel like utter shit. And
hmm
instead of always having interviews with people when they're at the other side of it and everything is great and everything is just, rosy bud and rainbows again, I thought it would be amazing to have a conversation with somebody that is vomiting and shitting himself and almost calling 911 and is feeling utterly horrendous.
Yeah.
And you said yes. It was actually you who suggested that we should do it, and I said yes because I think this is amazing. And then we can always have a conversation when you are on the other side. But right now, you are exactly where nobody wants to be. You
Mm.
are way down that, road where other people have turned around long ago, given up long ago, diverted long ago. But you haven't. You just keep going and going and going. And I'm so excited about this conversation. So, and you before I started to record, you said that you think that we should come with a disclaimer to what we're going to talk about. And obviously, I have no
Y-
idea what we're going to talk about. So, could you do the disclaimer for us?
Sure. I would say the disclaimer is just there's a few things that I need to speak in my language. And it's not that I'm concerned about it using a ton of excessive profanity or whatever, which is unimportant, but more just some of the descriptions of what was happening to the body. Just I think some people might find them a little gross or possibly vulgar, but it's important to communicate the severity of what was actually physically happening. I've
Yeah.
heard tons of stories of people when they go through a similar thing where they say they feel like they were going to die, which can be a general, I think that can be a general sort of a thought loop pattern in the mind. This was the body shutting down. And when it was shutting down, it was not pretty. So that was the disclaimer, just so that people were prepared for the occasional description, and I'll keep it as clean as possible, but there are some things that can't be omitted.
No, exactly. And also like we also talked about that I really would like to have an interview that is not, rosy red and rainbows of when you're on the other side and everything is great. I think this type of interview is just as important because this is the part that a lot of people do not want to experience, and that's why they're turning around. And what I would like with this interview is to show that what you have experienced, it's so normal, and it is really, dark night of the soul that is happening. It's really um scary and disgusting and all of that. And but if you stay with you, if you stay, with it, if you stay with the trauma and you just create space and reach out, then there is actually a path through it, no matter how hard and difficult it is. So I'm really happy that we're doing this.
Me too. Me too. It was in terms of physical pain, which I've experienced a lot of in my life, I would say it was probably the worst. And the main sort of body of the experiences was around a 10-day period. So if for anyone that's seen the end of the first interview, they were still working through some of it, and it wasn't we didn't really close it down and say, okay, we're done here. And I was still experiencing a little some of the molten ball, and still working with the mantra, and really it was. But the interview did leave off on a kind of a warm and fuzzy note, and it was nice. It was nice. It wasn't until after that that really all hell broke loose.
Go on.
Well, before I get into details, to summarize, I had just scratched the surface with what we had discussed before. And if you want to imagine your trauma is like an egg or a ball or something, the whole thing, and I mean the whole thing, cracked wide open.
Yeah.
And it started with not being able to go on my or even wanting to go on my nightly walks, which was very important for me, and a general feeling of discomfort. And then I continued working with the mantra and knowing that I had already tapped into some trauma. And then there would be a couple of days where I would be very uncomfortable and not catch it in time, but see that I was engaging in distraction behaviors, in comfort and distraction behaviors, sort of anything.
Which one? Which ones did you choose? Which distraction and comforting behaviors did you have? So you have an underlying feeling coming up, and then you do a distraction. Which distractions did you do?
Usually it can be anything for me, it can be from physical exercise.
Mm.
It can be food.
Mm.
I really enjoy movies, so it can be sitting and watching movies and
Yes.
really trying to fall into that, and maybe a combination of all of those, getting some really, really nice food and sitting down in front of the TV and just, yes, it's this.
Love it.
And it all began to lose its ability to do anything. Also, I need to interject real quick. I'm going to do the best I can to put this into chronological order. There's no way I'm going to be able to do it. So you're just going to have to pick through it. I would say that there was an intense 4-day period that was the worst. But leading up to that, I was starting to have problems eating, and there were a lot of tears. And I would find myself walking in circles around the apartment, being frustrated, still feeling the molten ball in the chest. Although at the time, there's already the commitment. You're like, okay, we're just going to go through this. I had no idea what was going to happen after that or how intense it was going to be, but no way to back out or move laterally one way or the other and try to distract. So as it started to get really bad, I started to not be able to eat. And then the processing started. And so the model here, what it looked like would be discomfort, not being able to eat, resistance. You maybe try to distract and then sit down, and then tears. Through the whole thing, tons and tons and tons of tears. And sometimes with the tears would come images or memories or held on to beliefs. And then the body would react again. And what that did was ramp up in intensity. And so we'll say about day one of the big 4 days was going back through wearing sort of a victim hat and a frustration hat. And the main through all this process, even though there have been moments of gratitude and knowing, okay, this is what I truly am, and having experienced that, all of that was fine. But just underneath that, there was still a resentment of why I didn't sign up for this. This wasn't something that I asked for, and it could have been something different. So what I began to do on that day was look through all the sense of victimhood and all the things that had been done to me.
Yes.
And I have to reemphasize, I'll only do this one more time, that as I'm looking through these, there might be a period where I'm sitting on the bed and then I'm doubled over and my body's really starting to hurt. And then I'm crying, and then the images are coming. And then, get up and walk around and process. So as I'm processing, crying too, the body's starting to tense up and starting to react in a really, really unpleasant way. And the images were just of anything that anyone had ever done to hurt me in whatever way, physical and mental, emotional. And they were extremely vivid, and it was like watching a slideshow. I remember being curled up on the bed with my pillow here and seeing it. And it was very similar, I suppose, to one of those your life flashes before your eyes type of review.
Yeah.
And and every time there was a flash of a new scene, more tears. And then the body and right in the center here, the abdomen would get tighter, and the molten ball is now burning. And my heart feels like it's going to start going going out of my chest.
Mm.
Then the sharp stabbing, well, then we would get another scene, another view, repeat, repeat. And then I would start to get sharp stabbing pains. And they ranged anywhere from just above my groin to just underneath the sternum where this molten ball is. At first, they were just intermittent, and then they started to get worse. So the second day-ish, or what happened next, I don't remember which day, was no, right before that. So there was so there was all the people that, okay, so I'm still in the victim type of a feeling here and being, and then later on, whether it was that day or the next day, then later on I was sitting there, and up until then it felt like there was this kind of movement of get it out, acknowledge it, get it out, acknowledge it, get it out, and then the whole flow reversed. And something said, how much of this can you hold in your heart? How much of this can you take back in? How much of it can you take and embrace and love? And so then it was all of those scenes, which were now out here, like little pieces or blocks or chess pieces. Now it was grabbing them all back in, which sounds, as I describe it, maybe sounds very lovely, but this is wild. There's snot pouring down my face. I'm starting to have diarrhea. My abdomen is on fire, and I'm sobbing. But I'm just, okay, just keep moving through this, keep moving through this. So then I had to take everything in, and it really felt like whether you want to call it a forgiveness or an acceptance or whatever term, but bring it back in. Now the body's really, my body was really starting to light up, and diarrhea was starting to kick in. And at this point, I think that first night I really tried to force feed myself some food, which was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
You know, I was very afraid that I was not going to get enough of what the body needed. And so I did that, and it made everything.
Yeah. Is it okay if I just make something clear for people that are listening? That
Sure, please.
This is not one day. This is days. It's days that it's been like that. And you haven't eaten because of that, full on pain that you have in the body. And then you try to eat some blueberries. And then that, because you're forcing yourself to eat and the body does not want anything because the body is working right now. And then you force feed yourself some blueberries, and then all hell kicks loose. And and so I just want to make clear so everybody understands that this is not like, Thursday afternoon between 2 and 4. This is like days, This is like, yeah, go on, sorry. Just wanted to make that completely clear.
That's great.
It's not a waltz in the park. It's not a waltz in the park. It's one of those where you think, this can't be right. I must be really, really dying. I must be so sick. I must be like, oh yeah, on the doorstep,
Right. And there's also, during this, there's really no sleep. There's I would get to the point in whatever round that I was doing, and that I would just become exhausted, and I would try to lay on the bed to just catch 30 minutes of sleep or an hour of sleep or doze off for 10 minutes. And at that point, I'm just begging for relief. And it's not this is not even at full intensity either. This is starting to ramp up.
Yeah. But the point is that you are still creating space and creating space and creating space. And you have me on the side and you have Vince on the side. So you're not going through this completely. I also want to say that to everyone, that it's important that you're not doing something like this alone, because you need somebody on the side that can say, this is okay, or you need to go to the ER right away. So you had people on the side when you did this, and you kept going into it, and you kept going into it, and you kept thinking that this must be the peak. This must be like the worst it can get. And then it just ramped up a little bit the day after, so it's, go on.
So the general fear is just mounting.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to go starting to tell myself there might be something physically wrong.
Yeah.
And then starting to sense that I just cracked something open, but the what I cracked open and how big it was is still not clear yet. So after I've done this, where I'm sort of taking everything in, and I'm starting to have the diarrhea, and I'm starting to feel nauseous, and then I ate the legendary now blueberries, which I don't know if I can ever eat another blueberry again. I may have ruined blueberries, or at least for a while, because I put them in and they immediately within an hour came out both ends, which from a physiological or medical standpoint, I don't understand how that works, but it works. It happens. So then the next switch of all these scenes, which was even harder to deal with, was all the times that I had been a predator towards other people, because I had been previously in a victim mode, and all the things that I had ever done to other people, and each one of those had to be walked through and felt, and then the shame that went with that. The one that got me the most was probably in terms of circumstantial or damage out in the world, not ripping people off for dope or beating somebody senseless, was Richie. And I was in 5th or 6th grade, and Richie was this little kid who was just following me around the neighborhood, just wanting to hang out. And he was irritating me, and I didn't want him to hang. I didn't want to hang out with him. So I turned around. I don't remember what I said to him because I was so young, and I just pushed him down on the sidewalk. And I remember the look on his face. Like, I'll still choke up if I think about it for too long.
Yeah.
And I didn't beat him up or anything. I was too young for that kind of aggression. But I remember the look on his face, and it's clear that it stayed with me because I remember his name.
Yes.
And the shame around that of I had just rejected this kid who clearly he wasn't really being annoying. He just wanted someone to hang out with. And I had been that way with other people too in life. So then I start going through the list of all the things. And it seemed like I couldn't, I kept remembering new ones, and oh yeah, and oh, I totally forgot about that. So the unfoldment of this isn't like in a 5-minute period or 5-second period when your life flashes before your eyes. This is hours. And then maybe you stop for a while because now the body's really starting to hurt a lot, and then another one comes up and another one comes up. So at this point I'm in full swing of nausea, and now I'm throwing up, although there's nothing in my system. And I'm starting to there's also starting to be nothing that's coming out of me, out of my backside, except I was spraying yellow bile out of my backside, out of my ass for over 24 hours. And it's getting up every 10 minutes, every 30 minutes, and then it would alternate, and then I would have to go vomit again. And that period didn't seem to have an awful lot of processing, although there were just raw emotions. There was a lot of sobbing. There was a lot of fear. Now my logical brain has kicked in, and I'm looking at what appeared to be gallons of bile coming out of me, and saying, medically speaking, this isn't good. This can't possibly be good. What's accompanying that now too are really sharp stabbing pains.
Yeah, of course.
Now it's as if it's I have to emphasize this because when people say I feel like I think I was dying, to me sometimes I would always interpret that as maybe a general sense of discomfort in the body. This was a literal physical felt, somebody doing this, and then from the inside and just punching or trying to stab through your and it was relentless, and it didn't happen just once or twice. It would just stay there, and it would stay there long enough to um to really start to worry me. And at this point what I've done is I'm migrating in between two spots, which is my bedroom here and the bathroom there. and I'm almost foaming at the mouth because of the nausea, and then the spit that comes up when you're ready to throw up. And I didn't want to sit there and gag the entire time. So each room had I didn't designate it, just wait. Each room had a spit corner, and thankfully my floor it's hardwood. It's not carpet. But if it was carpet, it wouldn't have mattered. And it was constant, just spit, just spit, just spit. I didn't care. Or if I didn't feel good, um, I would just lean over the side of the bed and vomit. And as this is starting to ramp up too, I'm starting to not be able to make it to the bathroom. So I ruined every clean pair of underwear that I had. There was one, and this is where the disclaimer came in, that I was in need of so much relief because it also felt like gas and bloating in the stomach, and I was emotionally exhausted from all the crying and the lack of sleep, that I was lying on my side. And I'm like, I know I'm not going to be able to go to the bathroom or make it there, because so many times I would get up and then the motion of walking would kind of close everything down, and then I couldn't get anything out. But there's this ball of spikes in my stomach. So I just lay it on my side and shit my pants. And I just at that point, I'm like, I don't care. I need relief from the pressure. Yeah. So,
Yeah, awakening sounds amazing, doesn't it?
oh, it's perfect. Yeah,
I
and you actually do levitate, but it's just the force of whatever's coming out of your body which causes you to levitate. And you do see things. There are mystical visions, and yeah, all of that happens. It's just not quite what you think it is.
No, and I really think that we are selling the feather work right now. Everybody want to sign up for this because it sounds amazing.
That was it was a past concern of sharing this to this degree and intensity with people. And I could give you the disclaimer, the disclaimer that it's probably not going to be this bad for you. You don't know.
No.
You just don't know. So if it scares you off, okay. It's going to happen. It doesn't matter whether it scares you off.
No, but
I mean the process.
I also want to say that it also depends very much on the person, because
yes,
you can take a break. You don't need to continue and continue and continue. You can do one and then retreat back and then get on with your life, and then when you feel ready for the next one, and then it just takes years, but you will get to the same thing. You don't need to vomit and shit yourself, and that's the only way to awakening. And through trauma and all of that, it is doable at a much more comfortable level than what Ted decided to do. But Ted is Ted, and and here we are.
Yes, being an over dramatic.
No, but also I also want to say that I have had a lot of patients that have experienced what you experienced, that is so close to a gallstone attack or appendicitis or heart attack, or it's the symptoms are very, very similar in that area, and people very often go to the hospital and get checked out and everything's fine, absolutely fine. But it is like that when you go through trauma, because it's decades of pain that has been experienced by the body, and the body's keeps the score. It remembers everything. Everything is still in the body, and that's why it needs to come out somehow. It doesn't need to be like you do, like month-long marathon to be on the other side, but it can be
right.
Yeah. So go on. You just made one of the most bravest decision in your life. You just roll over on the side and shit yourself. Go on.
Yeah. And the whole thing seemed like a paradox of absolutely no choice, or I was not controlling the process. And also there's nothing left. There's nothing left for me. Death is preferable. Physical death was preferable. So it's like, be careful what you wish for. And if you can do this in bite-sized chunks, if you can do this in pieces and then take a break, a month, a year, whatever, do it. But here this was, I had done all the other things and seen all the, as I mentioned in the last interview, and seen all the enormity of the no self, and so many things and all the mystical experiences that was known to a degree in the body, what this is, what I am, what all of this is or isn't, or however whatever language you want to use. But this was the last sort of holdout of, you have to go through this. So I had subconsciously, I think, put this off as long as I possibly could. And every time the realization process wanted to intuitively move into the body over these years, it was almost as if I would pull it back up and, let's stay right up in the head. Let's keep staying up here because this is comfortable.
Yeah, much safer.
So now we're into day 2, day 3-ish, and it's starting to get bad enough where I'm looking up stuff on the internet, because there are certain areas of the body that are lighting up really, really, really intensely. And I'm not looking for an energetic type of solution. I'm looking at like medical stuff.
Yes.
And I fit the descriptions of 4 or 5 things that were killing you. There was a burst appendix, there was a stroke, there was heart failure or heart attack. And with the nausea, a lot of people have the nausea with the heart attack, and that you can stay in that aftermath for days, I'm told, without treatment. And the fear became very, very real. So but I'm also feeling the sense just underneath that there's something different happening. But it's being ripped out of me. It's feeling like the personal will, the sense of the personality is being ripped out of me, because it wasn't just the wave of me looking at the victimhood or looking at the being the perpetrator, or I would get little snippets here and there of all different kinds of stuff that was connected to my personality, things that I was attached to, things that I was really, really dug in terms of identification. And then those would be addressed and cried over or vomited over. So in between that and then when it started to subside, now the vomiting is we're just going back and forth in between process, sobbing, tears, vomiting, shitting my pants, diarrhea. And the vomiting it's gotten physically so that even the tendons and muscles in my neck here are in pain.
Yeah.
All the way down to my groin.
Yeah.
And I would get in front of the toilet and there's nothing in my body at this point. I haven't eaten for 2 or 3 days, or 4 or 5 days. And the body would just clench and lock, and I would heave, and I would just sit there, and there's tears pouring out of my face, and saliva is pouring out of my mouth. And it wasn't letting me up until something came out. Which I really couldn't understand, because there was nothing left in there. And so that went on for a while, where I would just bring up just a little, maybe saliva or something, and then I would get up and come back here and collapse. And then 20 minutes later, here we go, and go back in again. And then something kind of switched, where there was a sense of needing to really move the attention into what was happening there.
Yes.
And this whole time I'm trying to stay with the body, because I've already been through some of this. I'm well versed in all these practices and be with it, and all of the things that we do when we're trying to be more authentic in
direct experience. Yeah, exactly. I also want to emphasize that, just in a bracket before you continue, please keep the thought that you are very well versed in direct experience. So you separate the thought from the feeling, and you just stay with the direct experience of the body reacting, and there's no label to what is happening. It's just allowing whatever is to be. You're very well versed in that. I just wanted to say that. Go on.
Yeah, the process is pretty much that's just for the most part is really automatic. So then there was this sense, and I'm leaning over the toilet bowl, and by this point the house is destroyed. There's spit corners that are starting to smell like enzymes in me. And it was this, okay, as body was clenching, and I was basically heaving and sobbing, it was okay, relax. And then that sort of that round, that spasm would stop after a minute or so, and then it was relaxed, and then it was my attention said move down into here, and then I felt my whole stomach relax, and I moved down into it,
Yeah.
almost like a hand fishing in there, right? And then that would trigger something. It would hit something, and then a really intense spasm, and then something would come up. So then that started to be almost this weird, gross vomit practice. And I kept getting farther and farther down into the abdomen, just kept going. And then I'm coming up with stuff of, I haven't eaten in days, and I don't know where that came from. So I don't think I eat that. But and I'm making light of it now, but in the middle of it, it's terrifying.
Yes, it
So,
is. Yeah.
and then what I finally had was this sense of the whole body purging out, whether it was physical toxins in the real world or emotional toxins, or on all the different planes of existence. Yeah. Of there was something, if this is the top of me and where my mouth is, and this is where the bottom of my torso is, there's something that was trying to meet in the middle, and then kind of scrape and kind of clear out and go all the way through, and then but it kept doing it, and it kept, and I was getting way deep down into the abdomen, and I could feel it. It felt like a giant, slippery, angry black slug, but a bunch of them, and they're flopping around in there, and sort of this energy, and those were part of the spikes and the stabbing pain in the lower abdomen. And I would reach down in there and feel those, and kind of sort of grab them or hold them. It was different every time. And then boom, more would come up and more would come up, and you could feel it. It was like there was something flopping around in there, like from an alien horror movie. So that's when the sense became clear of, okay, I'm really clearing something out. But in the meantime, I'm also coming back, and I'm sitting on the bed, and I remember the moment when all of the pains got so bad, especially, and it was almost in a straight line through the body, that um, you know I, I've only ever seen people scream in pain when they're giving childbirth, or when they're in movies, and I'm like, I'm gonna start screaming. And it's 2 a.m, and I live in an apartment building, and but I'm making a lot of noise, just like, he just, and it was unbearable.
Yeah.
Unbearable. And that's when it started to be uh, considered that I should call an ambulance. There was no way that I can drive, and I know a few people, some of my family who I've split from are just down the road, and I would think about, oh, I should call them, and I'm like, no. And I made this sort of thing. I said, well, if blood comes out of any end of me, I'm calling. I don't care. If I started to see blood, then that's something pretty. Then I will, and I'm going to ride this out until dawn. And I did, and I wrote it out till dawn, and it was really, really, really sort of the worst, darkest part. And in that period of writing it out till dawn, I had gone through these different scenes we talked about of being the perpetrator. I was at the end of that list of the perpetrator too.
Yes.
Of what I had done to myself.
Yes.
After I had run through everyone else. And that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And there was the sense of, and then the unworthiness. I'm unworthy to wake up. I'm unworthy to be here. I'm unworthy to, so I just scratched the surface of the shame and the guilt, really the guilt for existence, the guilt of,
so important.
Then I heard it.
Yeah. Guilt of existence. So important.
Yeah. I heard another speaker say something along the lines of that we feel guilt for feeling that we've left heaven, that we've left home, and we've tried to make something that's better than perfection. And that really, 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 really hit me. And the sense, which I will describe a little bit later, was that you've never left home. You've never left. You were just in, to use someone else's words, you were at home dreaming of being in exile. And when I heard that, I went, oh my God, yes. So that, but the guilt and the shame and a sense that there was this may really kind of get some of the non-dual, no doer, no, all that. There was a choice. There was an absolute choice in this at some point along the line, whether it was to believe my thoughts or to try to leave home, or there was a choice involved. There may not have been a Ted doing the choice, but it seemed like there was a choice. And that went against everything I've learned, but it also allowed me at one point to make a choice, supposed choice in the other direction. Even if it's just an apparent choice, it was a mechanism that I was able to use. So I end up going back to that night of, if blood comes out of me, I'm going to have to call somebody. That last round of sobbing was where everything really sort of broke, and it was all of the personal will broke. And I was laying flat on my back on my bed and sort of just looking this way, and this just abject, deep sobbing that I've never experienced. And I'm talking out loud, I'm praying, and I'm saying things like, I don't want this. Praying to anybody that I felt was important and relevant in my journey. Spiritual figures and gurus and such, and saying, that's it. I'm out of gas. I'm out of steam. I have nothing left. And it's very different than surrender in a moment of tears or after an hour or a day of having some emotional struggles. This was out. There was nothing left. And I said, you have to carry me the rest of the way home. That has to be grace, because I can't, I've done everything I possibly could. And then I'm looking at all this stuff, this collection of mystical experiences and aha moments and insights and aperture openings, like this weird Franken-lightenment thing that I've created, and said, just take it. And just take it. I don't want any of it anymore. As in, I don't want to hold on to this as some sort of either achievement or milestone or something that's going to prop me up. Just get rid of it all, because none of it's doing me a fucking bit of good. Not one bit. It's great if I want to have a conversation and look cool, or if I want to try to help somebody and appear to know something or have something, and I've got all the words and the memories and the descriptions of the experience to share with people. And this was about the time that you and I had that call. It was right after that. But it was just this giving up of just, there's nothing left. And despair is something, it was something deeper than despair, and it was something deeper than surrender.
Yeah.
And so I continued to write it out, or I just, at that point, I really didn't know. I couldn't tell you what was up and what was down. And again, the vomiting is still going on. The diarrhea is, it's maxed out, and I'm trying to hold down water, or I'm trying to hold down like these electrolyte drinks, just sips of it. And by this point, I'm sitting and talking with Vince occasionally. And I'm like, well, I threw it all up again. And he actually was absolutely amazing. I don't remember how many phone calls that we had. We had video chats, and there was once or twice when I was doing that polite, I think I've used up enough of your time, sort of, okay, well, I guess I'll be going now. And he pounced right on that and said, no, there's no need to rush off. And that was a little strange. And I said, I can't hold the phone up in front of my face. I'm exhausted. He says, well, just put the phone down. put the phone down, and we did. And I don't know how long we sat there, but sometimes it was just in silence, and sometimes I might have a comment, and then sometimes he might have a comment about something either relevant or just completely random. And then there was silence, and we would just sit in silence, and then maybe another comment. And I don't know how long that unfolded, but to have that connection right there
Yes.
was
Share the space. Yeah.
yeah. And I didn't realize that it was, I couldn't, although I'd heard the term, I'd heard the term many times, that people can hold space for other people. That
Yeah.
was the first time it felt that it had been directly held for me.
And also that part of him bearing witness, you know,
yes,
he was bearing witness to what was happening with you, you know, with that process that it was happening with you. He was just there, just bearing witness. So even though you didn't talk, you knew he was on the phone, and you were lying, being miserable, and you knew that there was somebody there bearing witness. And
mm-hmm.
that's so important in this process.
On one of our calls, I had to take him in the bathroom with me, and I just set him down, and hey, I'm and had a good 10-minute gag heave, dig into the slippery slug, type of thing, and then came back up for air, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm back, and he goes, well, that sounds like it was a good one. You brought some stuff up.
Yeah. I love Vince. He's wonderful.
On a side note, I have to say that I had reached out for years off and on to teachers, and I wanted to work one-on-one with teachers here and there. I think underneath I wanted to try to get their stamp of approval and show them how enlightened I was. But it wasn't until this whole process of the last couple of months that when I really began to feel super broken and desperate, and started to feel those moments of surrender, of I don't have anything left, the whole community showed up around me.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it until I was part way through it, and then I realized that there was support. And I initially threw a few tentative, first it was the LU people, but it was somebody who had put me in touch with them, who actually answered an email of mine, and then a few tentative messages to Todd, and then a one post on the Feder Free group, and then that put me, or on the LU page, and then that put me into the Feder Free group, and then that started. So it just started to create this sense of, okay, so I'm really not doing this alone. The body's physically alone here, and I'm not interacting with anybody socially, but I'm not alone at all.
Oh, exactly.
So that was, so when the community is supposed to be there, then it shows up. But I don't know that I would have been in a place before then, because I would have wanted to show you, I wanted to really be benevolent and help people in sort of a look at what I have kind of a way, and show you good folks how enlightened I really was.
And here we are, and you are making
Yeah.
a about you vomiting.
Shitting my pants. And like, it feels fine. I'm like, well, that's just what's happening right now.
Isn't it fun with expectations and what we plan? You know, never ever happens like we think it's gonna do, but it's exactly what we're gonna need. I also want to say that there's something so important in turning from being the victim and then turning into knowing that there can't be a victim. That shift, it's so important. Remember, we had the talk where you said that that you were still in that victim feeling, where you said that all this is so irresponsible, that all this, you know, can happen, that all this, that you guys shouldn't do something like this. This is so irresponsible. Do you remember that?
Yes, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then
I was so mad at you.
yeah, go on. Could you talk about it? And then what happened?
Well, I was angry at you because you had tricked me. Yes. So you had said, I'm going to give you this mantra, and I remember very clearly the context, and perhaps the context was true for the conversation at the time of, because we were talking about old scripts and patterns that play out habitually in the mind, and you said, no, you just need to rewire your brain, and you can do that. So you know, I love you, or I love myself when I feel safe. And I went, this is going to be great. I'm going to rewire the brain. And you know, in a day or a week or a month or however long it takes, I'm going to wander around and I'm going to love myself. I'm going to feel safe. And you fucking lied to me. It was a dirty trick. It was like, no, this didn't, I didn't rewire anything. What it did was it showed every area where I didn't feel loved, didn't feel safe, and it brought it so close up to the surface that I was sort of, in a way, I was forced to look at it, forced to deal with it. So it was, I had just had a different outcome, especially based on, well, Pernilla said, and then wait a minute. So now I'm here basically feeling like I'm considering that my body might actually be shutting down. And how irresponsible of this group to just sort of flippantly send me off down this path and then leave me with nothing. And by this time, I had already talked to Vince, and he was doing the same thing. And then the scripts kicked in. He's like, "Well, you can go to the hospital if you want, but this you're going to light up all their tests, and it's going to show that probably everything that you think is happening is actually happening to you." And I went, "Oh, cool, a cult." Oh, they got me. These, oh, son of a bitch. Like, just mad. That went away fairly quickly. I feel I was starting to see through it, but it stayed there for a good 5 or 10 minutes of just this very, you know, you guys are, how irresponsible of you to do that, to send me down this path and then just say, well, lots of luck, you know. Oh, sorry, I guess, you know. And
Love
then
yourself. Yeah.
I envisioned the reports that were going to come back, you know, to the groups of, oh, well, Ted actually died. Um, all of it, all of it. I went through all of it.
And then we spoke, and then I said that everything you just said about us being irresponsible, everything we ever say and what we ever think about other people is only about ourselves. How many times
Yes.
in your life have you done something where you have told yourself, this is irresponsible? Both when it has maybe been irresponsible, but also where it might actually would have been great to do it, but you had the ego telling you that you are irresponsible, you're not to be trusted, you're not the one that I can rely on, you're not. And that was the inner voice that you needed to hear, because all we do is just hold up a mirror. And,
Mm.
and then a shift happened in the conversation. Do you remember that?
No,
Oh, good. I was just about to say it's okay.
I'm already losing a lot of this stuff in terms of
Yeah,
memory.
yeah.
So
That's why I recorded it for you so you can watch it again. See, watch the recording again.
okay.
Yeah, and then notice it. What happens then? Let me mansplain it for you. What happens? What happens is that when you say, "I love myself and I'm safe," you're creating a scenario where you are loving yourself and you are safe. So all the areas where you do not love yourself and you're not safe needs to surface.
Mm.
It needs to come up, because what you are saying is happening is that you love yourself and you're safe. So all the areas that are not like that needs to surface and to be looked at. And the sequence that you did, that you started out, with the lightweight, with Richie, that when you were a child and he was walking right behind you and he just wanted to be with you, that sense of guilt and shame that you had when you saw his eyes, that was the light end of it.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
And then you had that insight and saw that Ted doing that, felt that shame, felt that guilt, and you stayed with that. And that made you ready for the next level, and to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And because you kept staying with it over and over and over and over and over, you ended up with the worst of all. First of all, you being the perpetrator towards all the people that you've been perpetrating, against, and ending up with the worst of all, the perpetrating towards you. And then you're at the core. I love
Mm.
myself and I'm safe. I love myself and I'm safe. Even that perpetrator that has done all that and done all this, I love myself and I'm safe. And you just keep staying within it and keep staying with it over and over and over.
Beautiful. It's
It is.
beautiful now. And you were Vince, and there was another friend that I would talk to off and on during this. Oh, this is so beautiful. And I would just listen to somebody say it or look at the message on my phone and yeah, you should try it from this
You
side.
should smell my apartment, how beautiful this is.
I think I do remember in the when not the interview, but when I had that video call with you that you said this is beautiful and what did I say? Oh, I think you and I have very, very different definitions, you know, of what I think we have different definitions of beautiful. It was like that in that bit in Princess Bride where the guy goes inconceivable and the other guy goes, "You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means." Because I kept hearing it and going, "Nah, it's not. There's nothing beautiful about this," you know. So I think it's important to note that in this process, I know at least for me that there is an almost religious type of training to want to try to treat all this stuff with love because we're told that, and bliss and acceptance, and you know everything gets to be there, and all of that is great. That's great, but it is I think it can be taken out of context, and what it did for me for a long time was prevent anything other than mild than frustration at the process. And I had moments of frustration in years past where I hadn't even scratched the surface of just I don't really want to do this anymore. I sort of backed away from it, you know, but I hadn't let myself really feel fully what showed up, and this was what was showing up right around the time that I'm collapsed and crying and praying. It was anger.
Yes.
It was massive anger, and it was that resentment of how I didn't sign up for this. And it went something like this: fuck this, fuck enlightenment, fuck source, fuck God, fuck all of it. I don't want it. And just rage. And I said those things out loud of just if there are any of those things any of these things out there listening, just a total consummate rejection of all of it.
Good.
Yeah, you know, thank you. No, thanks. I'm good. I want off the ride. I don't care. I'll burn in hell for the rest of it, whatever that looks like, you know. But the reason I bring that up is because I think that may come up. I don't know if it comes up for others when they go through this, but I had an inhibition against expressing that or even feeling that as an emotion.
Yeah.
And it felt really good and really important to get that out. That too is included in this process.
Yes.
The rage and the denial, and you have to just go, this is the dumbest thing I've ever embarked on in my life. I think swerving into oncoming traffic sounds more productive than this. At least I know how it's going to unfold.
Yeah, but it's I can only say it's so super important. I think it's in the first feta that I have a lesson exactly about this, but that it's like, you know, it's like this huge house and it has lots of rooms and you need to enter every single room because every single thing is about you. You need to embrace, yes, the bliss and the unconditional love and the unconditional acceptance and the friendliness and that, but you also need to embrace, you know, you being an utter twat and you saying fuck to everyone and being angry and being aggressive and being all of that. All of it is you. And if you only want half of it, you're delusional. You know, it is a package deal. It is a package deal. And it's all the rooms. It's also what I said before we started to record, that you can't say anything to me that will scare me off. I've been in every single room in myself. I am everything, you know. I am such a twat. I mean, try me off. I'm so arrogant. You never ever seen anything like it. You know, you need to be in every single room and own it. And then you can do with it what you want. But you have
Hmm.
it in the room. And you need, because you had that idea of wanting, you know, to be a teacher and show all the other teachers, you know, how enlightened you are. You need to go into the room where you just go like, you know, to everyone.
Yeah.
You need that because it's part of it. It's part of it. This is where you're really shaping you truly, where it's no longer based on trauma. It's no
Mm.
longer based on fear, anger, guilt, and shame. It's based on authenticity, on who you really are when you own every single room. And there's nothing that should not be there. It's also why you can have, you know, Vince with you in the toilet, you know, and he's just sitting you patiently waiting until you're done doing your thing. And then you pick up talking again, and Vince is Vince, completely calm. He's been in every single room, you know? And that is authenticity. That is when there's nothing that can't be said or can't be heard or experienced or shared or anything. Everything is okay, everything is welcome, because it's life, you know. It's what happens, and it's trauma, and it's all of that that is just, you know, that you need to go through for you to be in a place. You're not there yet, but you will be in a place where you see that none of this is real. You know, none of the fear, anger, guilt, and shame is real. None of all of this, all of these labels, it's not real. It's just labels. And at some point you don't need the labels anymore. And then it's just
Mm.
freedom. But right now you need all the labels, and you are welcome to put, you know, a post-it saying like twat, irresponsible twat on my forehead. I will wear it with pride, you know, because you need that. You need that. You need all the labels. You need all the blaming, shaming, complaining, and all the victimhood and all of that for you to look at it and go like, okay, the fingers are pointing at me, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. There's the keen sense. I flip in and out of that. So, because it calmed down and there was a couple of days of clarity, but there is definitely the sense of, especially when you see this type of repression in any type of spiritual tradition, whether it's non-duality or not. We don't go there. We don't process these emotions,
Yes,
and and it's very, very clear that you do process these emotions and you do identify with them as a separate person,
yes,
as a contracted person, because these are where you are still holding on to. This is a hook into identity.
yes,
And if it's a trauma based one or an unresolved one or an old pattern that's just very, very had been there for forever, that has to be identified with, that has to be claimed, that has to be, so that you can let it go. But if you spend all this time denying it, you know, you can no self and nobody to do anything and no one here to do anything for the rest of your life,
yeah,
and you're never going to break that 10th fetter. I can guarantee it.
absolutely,
It's just not. It's so that's so crystal clear, you know. So
absolutely.
um so now physically, so we're coming to the end of this crazy 4 days, and I'm starting to be a little practical. I look down at my hands, and my hands have aged 20 years, and it's dehydration. Now I'm into actual physical dehydration, because remember, we're just, stuff is still coming out and nothing's going in. And I had the it was at this point I was very rigid of, okay, this is all exclusively energetic. So I don't do anything about it. I don't take ibuprofen. I don't do this. I don't try to distract. And then something said, I think that you're open enough and you've faced enough of this stuff, where at least where the the place that I was in, also your body's not looking so hot. So I was starting to get cramps
Mm.
in the body from dehydration. So
Electrolytes, yeah.
so thankfully in modern times we to a degree, we have some luxuries. And I looked up a place that will, a medical licensed place that will come to the house and administer saline IVs and rehydrate for you, with a certified, nurse and all that. And I went, yes, absolutely. That felt like it needed to happen, because I also didn't want to actually have my body shut down, because because at this point I can barely make it to the door or to the next room. So I tried to get those people to come in the same day, and then they couldn't, and they said, well, we'll see you at 8 a.m. the next morning. And this is as all the pains are wrapping up, and they're still there. And when they couldn't get to me the same day, because I also want some relief at this point, I'm ready for some relief. I'm in the day, what, 6 or 7, or I don't even remember, but it's and it was still, there was just a little more left, and it was just a little more left. And I stayed up most of the night, and there was some diarrhea, and there was some vomiting, and there was some processing. But as this is starting to come to, this little section of it is starting to come to a close, and I'm talking to Vince, there's a real strong sense, which got way, way stronger, that I was witnessing my own death. Really, this death of Ted, and the identification with the personality structure, at least the gross identification with it. And that was sort of fascinating. So there was still some stuff, a little poking around and scraping at this bottom of the barrel here. Okay, is there what else? And then at some point it had switched where I'm like, I'm up for it. Okay, okay, another round of vomiting. Okay, another round of diarrhea. Okay, another round of sobbing. Okay, and I did move into that of just this. Okay, and this too, and and this too. Sure, but not a very challenging type of, I'm going to muscle my way through it. This is after this whole beyond surrender, beyond despair. Just okay, all right. So I made it through the night, and just before, an hour or two before the IV tech showed up, it was like both ends of me closed up, back and back, but in a positive way. Like, okay, it's time to stop the flow of everything moving out of your body. And it was quite a relief just to feel that, and just go, okay, this part is, for now, or at least the intense part is done. This is done. It didn't feel complete, or there wasn't any more work to do, but okay, I just knew, if you were to ask me right in that moment, I would see, no, there's none of that. Not that there's no work left, but all of that deep residual stuff, there isn't anything left. I've already gone in here and scraped and come in up from underneath, and remembered stuff that I had forgotten, and looked at it from and seen all the different angles and perspectives. And I'm out. I'm empty. I'm totally empty. And then and I'm trying to clean the house because it's a mess. Just get it and presentable enough that this guy doesn't send me off to the loony bin or send me to the hospital. You have to sign a waiver, and they have a clause in there that says if you look like you're in really, really bad shape, they potentially won't treat you, or they'll treat you and then shuffle you off to the hospital, which at that point now I don't want to go. I need to stay to finish this up. And I realized that the sort of the thoughts internal monologue is relatively lucid, but I haven't said anything out loud for a while. And I started to have out loud conversations with myself, just testing, because I don't know what I sound like to another person. And I panicked a little bit, because I wasn't doing very well at forming cohesive sentences. Wasn't quite gibberish yet, but I also knew that I need to present something to this guy that's going to show up, or else off we go, into the ambulance you go. So I sort of white knuckled through that a little bit, and he showed up, and he was very nice and very gracious, and actually sort of asked me. And before I knew, he said, "What's going on?" Because I had initially said, "I'm just coming off of a fast, and I feel like I need some fluids." And he said, "Well, what's going on?" And I said, "I was using a meditative practice and cracked open a whole bunch of trauma." And he kind of eyes got a little bit wide, and then just maintained a very nice conversation back and forth with this guy. And that was really beautiful. It was he was just asking if I was okay, and um, what kind of stuff I felt like I wanted in this IV, because you can get different things for nausea, or you can get magnesium, or you can get potassium, and you can sort of make your own custom.
Relax, yeah.
And I said, look, I just haven't eaten, and I have no nutrients in my body, so whatever you feel like is appropriate. I'm just my body needs fuel right now. So we did that, and he left. And I would say that was where all the pain and all that shifted into something different, and it shifted into quiet. Although I was having occasional pains, maybe a little bit of diarrhea, but I was actually being able to urinate. I couldn't really eat still, but it started to shift into a sense of I was becoming lucid enough to kind of to reflect and go, I'm not here anymore. I'm not, and really not there. Just wait a minute. But there was none of the fear that was associated with it that I had been so afraid of when something like this had happened before. And I don't know if it was the big no self or none of that matters. But what wasn't there was Ted, the personality structure, the identification with all the past and all that. I had just witnessed that funeral, and watched my own death, and it was quite amazing, to see the death of so much identification. And um and and then I would sort of try to look back into the recent past of maybe walking to a store, or being out and getting some at a coffee shop, and everything looked like I was looking at it through um, those windows and limousines that are tinted too dark. It just didn't. I couldn't really describe it other than that. Maybe it felt like, and there was whenever I looked at it, there was a feel of an anxiety, of a desperation, of a shame, of a clenching that went with that was associated with that picture. And I went, and the more I reflected on it and sort of contemplated with it, it was like, I'm dead. Just and then there was just a few, there was not for not very long, but there was a few tears around that, of just sort of um a tears over someone's grave.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
just sort of
you wrote to me, and I thought that was so beautiful. You wrote, it's like looking at life in the past as if I was looking through heavily darkened windows. I
yeah,
just thought that was so beautiful. That it's just like that. The past is just, at such a distance now that you can't even see it clearly, because there's no one
right.
that had any past anymore.
Right. And there was lots of that. So when there's these tears that were coming up, it wasn't anguish, and it wasn't the grieving, because I had been grieving myself and the loss of partners and all sorts of things for months. This was more, how do I put this? It's like that final bit in the hero movies or in the emotional movies, where they go visit the dad's grave the one last time, and then they have the little talk, and the tears. But that's the point where they say the final goodbye, and then it shows them walking off into the next chapter,
Mm.
into the sunset, as it were. But they do, and it was sort of wistful, and there was kind of smiles with it, like, oh, but also like a final goodbye, just watching that person go. And there was relief. There was a definite relief to it. So then things start to get a little bit more interesting, and I'm at this point I'm emotionally very, very flat, of course, but I'm also just one pointed on now, on this. And so little insights are coming, and now Vince and I are dialoguing back and forth, and we're having conversations. And it was very beautiful. So many of these conversations were I would make a statement or a question, and he would come back with, well, do you think it's this? And I would have to sit with it for a second. And sometimes it would be yes, and sometimes it would be no. But what it was doing, it would open up something else, and I would fall through another trap door and go, oh, maybe it's not that, or maybe it was. And then there was some processing or some tears that went with it. And we had a number of those conversations where you just kept falling down, and it became really clear that when we're looking at this stuff through the lens of identification, through the memories and through trauma, that there are layers to it. Because I had gone through the layers over those very painful days. And first, it's going to be very specific about the incident, and then you're gonna feel into the emotion of what that is. But if you stay with that and you're curious about it, you'll see then there's another underlying message, right? That one will still have identification with it, but you're getting closer to the core. But you can feel that, and that might have a broader scope to it, or it might have just a general sense of something. And then there will be something underneath that. And you keep getting down. And most of the time you get down to, when you're still in the sense of feelings or emotions, you get down to the base of shame or fear, unworthiness, guilt, and then you feel the feelings of that. But there were a few times that, uh, and Vince and I walked through these, and then I walked through a number of them myself, that it would start out with a very identified, specific version, and you would crack through all of these ones. And if you keep examining, I think this is so important. If you keep examining, you will always get down to a sense of it's just this, and there's no person attached to it, and there's no anything, and then there's no longer a sense, even a sensation or emotion attached to it. It always brings you back into that moment, into the now, into this
Direct.
beautifully unidentified, just this.
Yeah, exactly. Direct experience where
Yes,
where nothing is missing and nothing needs to happen, and everything is exactly as it's supposed to be.
yeah,
And it
yes.
can't be any different. And any thought about it should be any different than what it is. It's just a thought. And there's no attachment to the thought. It's just like, oh, yeah.
So that was fun to see, and we that kept manifesting or showing up in my conversations with Vince, where we would play with it, and we would keep digging down on just bizarre stuff or abstract concepts, and it would always get down to he was out of words and I was out of words, and we might send like a heart emoji back to each other, and then we were done with the conversation. But it kept going down, and it felt like being guided. It felt like being led every single time, just being, okay, bring it down, stay here as long as you like, whatever, feel it. All of that is fine, but keep digging, keep investigating, and then you get down to, and I would get off the phone and just sit in the room and just, and now I know where everyone, where you see people get that weird stare, and you just look around and you're not.
Yeah.
And I knew it was happening, but I couldn't really think anything about it. And just, oh, and it would be, clear and open. It would kind of pulse. Sometimes it would pulse into, deeper clarity, and then, close, or it would just open all the way up, and there was just nothing there again.
Mm.
Um, but a very, very just a very, very here, alert presence of nothing. I don't know how. I really don't know how to describe it, but It's not nothing that nothing's there, because there's also this, it's an intensity, it's an intensity of just, this, and you go, God, this is, but you can't even when I was in the moment, you can't even just go, oh, this is pretty nice. It's
It's an
just that.
aliveness, yeah. It's a very, very active aliveness without any movement. I understand exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. And
So
it's so beautiful. If I may just, again in the bracket, if I may just say that it's so beautiful, what you're describing, that you keep coming deeper and deeper and deeper, and because every time you go one step deeper, some things need to let go. There's something that needs to let go and let go and let go and let go until you're just in that pure being, that pure presence where there's nothing more to let go of, because there's no one to let go of. There's not
hmm,
even a moment, there's no time, space, or dimension or anything. It's just that pure being of being. Yeah.
yes, um, that's not here all the time, which is, but it's also completely fine, because it shows up sort of it shows up when it wants to, and all that's, if there's, and there isn't an appearance of being able to do practice or to maintain or cultivate alertness or presence, but there's that little mechanism of like, okay, it's here. So there's still, it's so hard to talk about, because there can be apparent effort, but it doesn't feel anything like the, I need to knuckle down, dig in, I'm going to meditate for an hour, or I'm going to practice cultivate presence right now, or I'm going to not do this or not do that. It was also just watching that, it was just happening on its own. It was just happening on its own. And at this point, I've had the ability for no distractions. I think I tried to watch some YouTube stuff, not like seeking, but more like a very comforting type of thing,
Yeah.
a couple times, and it was so intense that I couldn't get near it. And
Yeah.
something said, well, take a break and sit and watch a movie. In the beginning of the process, I tried to watch a movie, and nothing was working. Because it was a distraction, but it was just like, all right, just take a breather, sit down and watch a movie. And so I'm just watching. I don't even remember what I was watching. Nothing that was worthy of tears. Action movie or something. I think I watched The Amazing Spider-Man and like a kung fu movie. And in both instances, I found myself sobbing. There was something. It was, and I'm going, okay, so
Now
now
you're
you're
that
blubbering. Now you're blubbering to a Marvel movie. That's a good one. But the second one was the reason I bring it up, it was very, very important, was to see that at this point there was this sense of, or that I was seeing. I don't know what triggered in a movie, but in the movie, or what the scene was, or if it was two lovers coming together, or really some, I don't even, it doesn't even matter. But it was this sense of, it started to become very strong, and said, this is home. Now, remember, through all of this and through all the prayers, and I didn't mention it earlier, but I said, all I want to do is be safe. I want to be loved, and I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. And I went, this is the home. And
guy.
I've never left. I never left.
Yes.
Now, this is where it gets weird, because then I saw scenes from my past, just a couple of them. And some of them were quite horrible. I was in prison. They when you go to the hole, to the shoe, after doing something very bad, which is, the hole is, prison inside of a prison. They put you in what they call a stand-up cage, and it's a little cell for one, before they process you and put you into a cell. And you could be in there for up to 24 hours, and you can't sit down, you can't move, and you can a little bit, but it's really, really uncomfortable. And I flashed into being into that, and it said, yeah, then that was home. So that was also home.
Yes.
And then I started to realize and see, what almost that everyone is trying to go home. And we do this through familiarity.
Yeah.
We do this. This is why you will listen to your favorite song on repeat 30 times. This is why you will go to your favorite restaurant. You're crushed when they finally close, or they're open, or they're not open on the day that you can't get there. This is why you, if you see pictures of people at a concert for a band that's been around for forever, and that one favorite song comes up, and the whole place is just emotional, and the lighters and the whatever, and I go, this is why we're doing this. Everyone wants to go home, and these are the keys. These are the mechanisms before you get into this process of saying, I am loved, I am safe, I am home. And that's why we cling to these things. That's why we'll cling on to a specific thing. Or I can't believe you broke my favorite thing, or I have to wear my favorite shoes, or where's my lucky whatever. Because they're permission to remind you that you never left home. Because even in those moments, for a person that's never pursued this, they're home. They really are, because you forget the self, and you forget the personality, and you're just lost in the music, or you're lost in the scene or the view of the area, because you maybe like to go hiking or camping or something, and you're just home. And so we're all yearning for that. And as that's coming up, a whole different type of tears just came over me. And up until this time, the physical manifestations of tears, with lots of chest and racking the body, and lots of activity, but not a lot of actual tears coming out of my eyes. And this was a whole different thing, and it only lasted a few minutes. But I just sat there. I was sitting in this chair in front of my laptop watching this movie, and just tears just pouring out of my face, without any of the body clenching or getting tight, and just
the body crying. Yeah, the body crying.
yeah, just this is, oh my God, I've never left home. I've never left home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So during this settling period, there were also a lot of dreams, and some were very
Before we move on, may I just
sure,
have a
please.
little one here? What you're describing there with the body crying, it's when we're in the ninth theta and we allow things to be as they are, and there's no longer that restlessness of wanting to plan or to do things in a certain way, or all of that. It's just that flow that is happening with it. Then we also get to a point where, because there's no one inside the body, there's just a meat suit, and we allow that to be as it is, and we take as good care of it as possible for it to thrive and live as long as possible. But there's no attachment to it or to an I in it. When we're there in the ninth theta, that is when we experience exactly what you're talking about. That there's just the body. A trauma comes up. I had it the other day. Different things happened. A trauma came up, and I could, like, oh, the body's crying. There was not a me, and there was no sadness, and there was no attachment to any trauma or anything, but the body went through a release of a trauma, and the body cried. So there's like tears streaming down my face, and I could just observe that happening to the body, and then it was sorted. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that is one of the things that will return, and it's gonna be the space where you live in, where you follow the different directions that the body is moving you in, and you just follow what the body is moving you towards. Very much like you described, you just had it like purgatory, but where it's things is happening in the body, and there's not an I attached to it. Yeah.
Yes. That seems to happen more and more, that flow that we talked about in the last interview.
Yeah.
Or more accurately, it seems like I have the inability, despite whatever thought patterns are left, to I mean, I can plan all I want, but it never unfolds that way.
Yeah, but
It's just, and you feel just in the moment, okay, get up now, okay, make some food,
yeah,
okay, time to go to the bathroom, okay, time for a nap,
exactly.
time for,
Exactly.
um, so during that much quieter one pointed period, there was, once I had gotten a little bit of food in me, then this is when things were starting to open up, and it felt like this, like when I sat there and cried at that scene in the in the kung fu movie, it felt like my heart had broken, but not in the "you broke my heart," more like it broke open,
Yes. And
you know,
yeah.
and um, so that whole period, that whole event actually didn't. There wasn't really any pain or sorrow attached to it. It was really pretty. It was quite beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the body shut down a lot. I think I slept for close to 24 hours straight after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. You need that. You need that. Another thing I just want to weave into this, how are you with diversions and distractions? Because way back, when we started to talk about all this, you talked about the diversions that you had with food and with what was it? Food, exercise, and movies. That
Mm,
you felt something coming up, and then you did a diversion. That's the third fetter. And when we then what you did was that you decided subconsciously probably that you wouldn't divert anymore, and that's when the blueberry incident happened. And the third fetter with all the diversions, when we no longer divert from the things that are underneath, but we allow what is underneath to be, and we allow it to surface, and we just stay with it and stay with it and stay with it, then the third fetter breaks, and the third fetter is paired with the nine fetter that is just that flow.
mm,
That's why I'm asking, do you still experience diversions being there, or how?
mm.
And sometimes, and in some areas, but not in other areas. I'm
You
just
know, that's a good question. I think they might happen momentarily, but that could be. I have to sit with that for a second, but there's activities that I do that were previously considered to be distractions, but that are happening. So in the setting that I'm in right now, I have I I left the house last night, but I hadn't left the house in 10 days.
yeah.
And there are and so everything is a practice right now, without deliberately saying that it's a practice, but
Yes.
everything's a one pointed thing. But it changes. It might be just lay down and just be quiet. Or it might be, there are certain YouTube channels that I like and listen to, but there's not a feeling of a seeking there. There's a feeling of some, I don't know if it's a reminder, but just like visiting with an old friend. So, but then you can't do that all the time. And it dawned on me yesterday that as relaxed and flowy as it feels, it's still very intense right now. It's very, very, very intense. So the practice or the absorption and the processing is still happening really intensely. So then there's periods of where I would just sit down and okay, I'm going to watch a movie, but it didn't feel distracting. It just felt like watch. And then when it started to get a little stale, like, oh, you're gonna watch one more episode of this, or you go, and it just doesn't taste right. It doesn't feel right. And sometimes I'll respond immediately, and other times it might take me a few minutes to go, okay, move to the next thing. And the next thing is always clear. It's always very clear. And sometimes it's so simple. It's take a shower,
Yeah.
or um, take a nap, or make a snack, or stare out the window, or listen to a YouTube thing. So I don't know that I can't say that they're distractions, or if they start to turn into them, you see them very, very quickly. But it's, if you were to have filmed this, you're like, well, there's Ted just scrolling on Instagram for a while. But that's what's supposed to be happening. So it doesn't, and then you go, okay, well, that's enough of that. And then it's on to the next thing, or on to the next thing. Um,
I'm so interested in how that develops. We're most definitely going to talk again, because that is in a development. I can hear, you know, the development in that is amazing.
um, yeah, you know, and there's, I mean, there's really also, there's just not a lot to do.
In one
Because I'm,
room, no, not really,
yeah,
not being outside for 10 days.
yeah.
Um,
So then,
Tell me about your dreams.
oh, okay, one was very, very personal, which I don't mind sharing. You know, I'm 2.5, 3 months out from the loss of my long-term partner, best friend, you know, um, which is also seen as me as well, too, by the way. So it's there, I'm holding both of those at the same time. And I had a dream that she actually never showed up in the dream. I had a dream that I was with a very close friend of mine in Buffalo, and he was presently dating her. And but this was all unfolding at my mom's house, which we know mom was the big one here. And the hurt and the rage and everything was so intense. I've never been woken up uh, with a rage feeling before like that. And I just, whoa, man, mad, and then loss, and how could you, and then the mind really wanted to grab onto some sense of hope that maybe it will all work out with her again, because we were very, very, very close, even as we were tearing each other to shreds in the last year or two. um, and at the same time, within just a minute or two of all of that happening, of me snapping open my eyes, and I was like, I think I woke up and I was like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck? You just, it was okay. And there was you're just processing. You go, okay, and this too. All right. And then, and rather than try to distract, I just sat with whatever the feeling was in the body. So there were a couple of those, and one had to do with like being around predatory animals. That was pretty intense. I don't remember that one as specifically, but I was they were I was definitely being chased, and it was the same thing of, okay, it's clear that there's something that I couldn't necessarily see as I was scraping the bottom of the barrel. We're still stuck in the subconscious somewhere. So you're gonna, now's your time. You're going to experience all of it. You're so I okay. That now that the dreams the next night were of a far, far different variety, and this was after the feeling like coming home and the sobbing and all of that. And I'd never had such dreams of freedom in my entire life. One I couldn't describe. It was like being on the Tron light cycles. It was, but it was just light and movement and moving forward and intersecting different paths. But it was all very, very free, and it was very. It felt infinitely closer to reality than this very gross version of it. And there was such joy in it, and that faded, and then came back into another one where it was still, I was there, I was still the same subject in that one, but this time I was sort of, I moved up against, of all things, this beautiful orca, this killer whale, and slid right up next to it. And I can't remember how I said it, but it was so beautiful, and I was expressing what was clear in the moment of, I am one, you are one, or I am love, you are love, this is love. Something very, but when I said it in the dream, it was infinitely more powerful.
Yeah.
And so now, if this is the whale and this is me sort of glued to the side of it, and then I was already sort of cruising around, right? And so then off we went, and we're just doing this thing, and it was just, I woke up and went, God, that was beautiful, of just freedom. It was just free, freedom, freedom, freedom was the word that kept coming. And I, uh, and I also, the funny thing is I didn't have the sense to attach to it like I had in any of the other previous waking experiences of bliss or aperture openings. It was just, yeah, like that's how it is, not that specific view or images I was seeing, but just go, all right, this is good. And also I'm ready for whatever comes up next, whatever. So however this could be. And sure enough, something came up next. Like I'm still not done with the physical stuff. So now I'm free and I'm basking in the afterglow of these dreams, and we're now we're up to speed, and I get up in the morning and I bend over to pick up 5 pounds of books and my back goes out. This is after the couple of days of clarity, of quiet, of
freedom dreams and yeah.
all of it. And I'm like, son of a bitch. And that would have been the primary manifestation of my trauma through most of my life. I think we covered that in the last video.
Yes.
And oh, I have to do this before I forget. Sorry to jump way back. The symptoms with the 4, 5, 6 days of the intense pain. Also, remember we talked about it was exactly like heroin withdrawals, which was something I had a terror of. I forgot to bring that up, but it ties into the back thing because these were the two physical sensations that I was the most afraid of.
Yeah.
And so the chills and the shaking in the body and all that. So that was happening through all of this as well too. Okay, so now we're into the back. And the back, when it goes out, was always in terror. And it would shut down work and it would make me walk in like a curved over question mark. And sometimes it would be I could get up and walk a few steps and there would be a massive spasm enough to make you want to grab something, or you just fall. You know, and then the fear is if nobody's around, if you sit there and you fall, how are you going to get back up again? And so it did that little twinge, and I went, ah, damn it. Okay, well, and then very quickly moving into, all right, well, and this too. And what I started to do was I went, all right, well, I can run for the bottle of ibuprofen. I can put my hips up against the sink and start just twisting to try to pop all of this back into place, which was the normal, which never works. Once it's gone, once it's out, it's out. Whatever it is. I think it's a spasm, but it feels like it's out. Or I can sit with this and I can be with this. And then also I started laughing. I was just laughing quietly to myself and then speaking to this very imaginary remnant of the ego or the mind body that was telling me through this whole process, go no further or you will die and I will kill you. And I went, your window's closed. You missed your shot. The time for that is past. So you're gonna throw this at me? Great. I will be laid up for a month. I don't care. And genuinely, you go from here. You go. I don't care. So if you want to do this, let's do this. And then you're just laughing. You're just laughing at it, you know, and not in a like a bravado type of a way. It's just funny.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I felt like I needed to work with it and talk to it. And so I'm rubbing my whole hand on my lower back. And now my type of conversation has changed from the initial rubbing my chest in the beginning of this process of, hey, we're loved and we're safe and trying to comfort this thing or reassure it or whatever. It's sort of an aftermath. I'm like, okay, well, we're already home, right? And we are safe and this is home and you are loved. So stay as long as you like, but it's okay. Hey, I see you. I got you. It would be nice to not be physically uncomfortable, but I don't care. Stay as long as you want. Whatever you want to do. So I'm doing that. And then I'm doing some of the shaking thing that you were telling me to do. And within about 5 minutes, this was the weirdest part of the whole thing. My abdomen blew up to about the size of distended to about the size of being 6 months pregnant, and rock hard. And now I'm really laughing because it's like the body. So I couldn't really interpret it. I'm going, well, maybe it's just, there is some processing, some releasing happening, and it released from the back to the front and whatever. But and I'm standing there and it's too cold to take my shirt all the way off, but I want skin to skin to contact. So I've got my shirt rolled up into my armpits, pants halfway hanging off of my ass, and I'm rubbing my belly and I'm rubbing my back and I'm laughing and just being there with it. And I went into the bathroom and just looked at this. It's just so this is just ridiculous. And then I turned sideways and I'm like, we're so proud, it's the boy. um so I did that, and then the distending settled down a little bit and settled down, and the back settled down pretty well, because that was early in the morning, and I had a lovely visit with a friend, and I shared, who's been sort of spectating through this journey. He came over for some tea, and all was well, and I'm flowing, and I took a nap, and it was getting late, and I'm like, well, I feel like I should probably take a shower right before I go to bed. So I go to the bathroom and decide to take a shower. And I do feel like I've got this back thing licked a little bit and feeling a little proud of myself. Look at that. I didn't resort to any of the other things. And I had this thing um, sewed up within 8 hours, which is normally a 2 to 4 week process for the body to unclench in times past, minimum. And then the spasms start hitting, and I'm in the bathroom, and I fall, and I catch myself on a slippery sink, and then stuff goes flying off the counter, and then, oh crap, it's back again. And then I take this very hot shower, and everything's kind of okay, and I make it out of the shower, and I'm trying to get dressed, and the spasms again, and now I'm almost hitting the floor, and a little bit of panic starts to show up. After all of this, I'm like, damn, more, huh? And and but simultaneously, what goes with that too, although there was still some fear, there was definitely some anxiety and some fear. I'm not going to say that it was just, oh, this is all wonderful and total acceptance, but there was also the, okay, just sit with this. And there's no need to be smug, because if you were going to be smug and say that you were just able to rub the emotions out of the area, then that's going to be a formula and a conclusion that you're going to be able to draw upon, and then you're going to be able to brag about it,
A
or
concept, yeah.
you're going to tell,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So then I sat with that, so that it was all the next day, and could barely walk, and I would hit a spasm, and I couldn't make any food because I couldn't stand up straight long enough. I couldn't make it, and now I'm starting to talk to it a little bit sternly, reprovingly. Hey, we can do this, but I do need to eat, or I have to be able to make it to the bathroom. And in response, at one point during the day, usually it will only happen if I'm trying to stand straight up, right? So I have to go to the bathroom, I have to poop, and so I sit down. It's just never ending. I sit down, and with my knees bent, if I'm sitting down, usually I'm always fine, right? And so I'm getting ready to do my thing, and all of a sudden the spasm hits as I'm pooping, and I'm grabbing for the walls. Stuff's coming out of me. Like, are you kidding me right now? So it was just, and then of course, but the whole time I am, even in the fear and stuff, I'm laughing. I'm like, okay, and this too, fine, okay, like whatever you got. So I made it through that, and then woke up. I woke up yesterday morning, is where we're at now, and getting ready for the Feder group, and everything starts to get really tight again, and starts to be very uncomfortable. And I'm plotting, how am I going to sit? I wouldn't been able to sit like this for that long. And what am I going to do? And so I just sat through the Feder group, and was still with some of that pain and trying to get as comfortable as I could. And I don't know if you were there, if you remember when my video would go out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that was me. I think once I had to get up to go to the bathroom, but the other one was me getting up and standing up. Something said get up and stand up, and not stand up in a question mark, and sort of just work with it. And so I'm standing there and just rubbing it, and I'm kind of just swaying back and forth a little bit and doing all that. And then I would have some relief and feel like I'm standing up straight, and there was none of that. I can anticipate when it's going to clench and it's going to put me on the ground again. And long story short on that one, doing that 3 or 4 times, by the time the Fetter group had ended, it had gone about 95%.
Yeah.
It just dissipated. And I was very concerned. I'm like, okay, now this one's definitely an injury.
Oh, the mind is sneaky. Yeah.
Yeah, the power of the psychosomatic response, and it was so good, and it released enough. I know I had a little bit of discomfort this morning, but having not any of the spasms or whatever, because it's just being with it and just going okay, and you right into that flow of okay, what next? Sit down, stand up, don't do nothing, do something. Okay, this. Then I went outside for the first time, and I took a walk down to the corner store, and I went down. There's a little pop-up stand that I get my tacos and burritos from, and I had the first decent meal in a while. I just got myself this gigantic burrito, and had walked out there a little tentatively because I'm like, if I have a spasm right now, they're so debilitating
Yeah.
that there's no getting back to the apartment. And we're talking, I'm not walking any more than 50 yards up the street. It's right up on the corner. So I had to go, all right, I'm gonna just trust this. And I walked out and it was fine. I was a little cautious, make sure, don't do any cartwheels or jumping jacks or anything. And so I think now we're up to speed.
Okay, I have a question because you talked a bit about the shaking exercise. The shaking exercise is really, really good at activating all the memories in the body, and I am thinking that it might be connected with the spasm that you have had, because you have had all. Remember that we talked about that that healing goes from the inside to out, and from up to down. That's how healing is happening in the body. So what you experienced where it was like the inside and scraping the bottom of the barrel and all of that, now you are a bit further out because you're in the muscles and the ligaments and the joints, so you're a bit further out, which means that there's still more. It's gonna have a different flavor, and it's gonna be a different experience, but your job is the same. Your job is exactly what you did, creating space, rubbing the lower back when you need that, allowing the belly to become 6 months pregnant, just following whatever is needed, and just be there with compassion all the time. And whatever comes up, allow it to be there. Don't try to be, the good enlightened person,
Right.
just allow whatever room you need to look into, you look into, turn the light on, floodlight on it, and just be with it. It's there anyway. And if it comes up to the surface, it's because it needs to be looked at. You need to look at that. There's more in it. But when you do the shaking exercise, I just want to explain what the shaking exercise is that the body remembers all trauma. Everything is stored in the body. And a really good way to get in contact with it is shaking. And what you do is you stand up and you have like a hip width between your feet. A hip width is the size when you take your foot in like that and then take it out. That's the hip width that you have. And you stand with a hip width and you have slowly bend knees, and then you just start to shake. And I know some people like to do it, orderly, shake one hand, shake another hand, shake one arm. I'm not like that. I'm like the full throttle, 70 hippie shake. So you just shake everything as much as you can, and you stamp your feet so you really get activated in your feet, and you stamp and you stamp and you shake everything, and you shake your entire body and your head. And what you're going to do is kind of like as if you are activating energy in the body, and you can feel how it's accumulating. And then you shake and shake and shake, and when it's like coming to a peak, you roar. And I would recommend you to take a pillow and roar into, because you might make people nervous in the neighborhood. I don't want you to scream, because scream is a victim. You're not a victim.
Right.
You're getting
Yeah.
you're getting back to your power, and you're roaring. That's why it's like all the power. Just, show the power, all of it. Just activate, and everything you have activated, you allow to come out. So it's both power, and it's frustration, and it's anger, and it's like awesomeness, and it's like all of it that is just being poured out in that roar. And do it into a pillow so you haven't got any limits, so you just all roar into the pillow. And then you feel if there's more. And if there's more, you do another one. Stamp your feet and shake your entire body. You can do it to music if you want to, whatever music, fits your temperament. That's what you do. And then you do the same thing again, and feel how it's accumulating. And don't roar too quick. Let it accumulate until you can feel now it's there. And then you roar, really have that power roar, where you just release all frustration, and at the same time, it's power. You really, really get in contact with your power, where you feel that there's not a victim here at all. And there's nobody that needs to be a bully or needs to be, a perpetrator of anything, because it's just pure power. It's just that self-care power that comes up. And that is kind of, and you keep doing that until you just have that peace. And then you just stand and just, you can sway a bit, or you can move in whichever soft way that you need, or you just stand still, where you just have that peace that is entering every cell of your body, and it's entering every single muscle of your body, and it's just entering your entire, the entire physical meat suit. It just has that, vibration of peace, because everything has been let go. The next level exercise is doing it sitting, but I don't want you to do that yet. I want you to be able to move in a way where you don't, activate too deep. Because when you do the same exercise but sitting, there's no shaking of there's a bit of shaking of the arms, but there's no shaking of the legs, which means that your pelvic floor is fixated. And that means that when you're shaking, you're activating around the spine. And in the spine, we have all the nerves ending that are coming out to all the organs, which means that it's very, very centered around energy around the spine, and around, trauma that is really, really deep in the core of us, where you were down scraping. That's where it's situated. So it's much more deep, and the memories and the pictures that come up are much, much older. But I would like for you to wait with that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a sense of anything other than right now. It's that sort of that intuitive sort of, it's just sort of that flow. Just, okay, what's next? What's next?
Yeah.
And when the back went out too, it was almost as if I was feeling pretty good and feeling like, okay, now I'm ready to, maybe I'm going to really venture out into the world. And it was almost as if the back said, not quite yet, or go out based on necessity, if you need to go get groceries or something. But not time to go out and explore. It's just stay here. And I went, okay, that's good. Vince and I had it at some point after it had all calmed down. He asked me if I was afraid if it would start up again, which was the 4 intense days of all that. And I really had to sit with that for a minute and go, well, first of all, it wouldn't show up the same way. But if something starts again, but there's a willingness. If I had to do that thing again, that exact same version, I would.
Mm.
Just because what else is, because then what else is there? You at that point that this is what's required.
Yeah.
This is and this is what's just coming up as well too.
Yeah.
And lots of moments of there's no sense that anything. I'll have a desire for something, maybe a food or a quick, maybe a beach wouldn't be nice, but it's very fleeting. But there's no sense of anything should be any different than it is right now.
Exactly.
You know, I'm sure that goes into greater depth and all of that. But right now it's okay.
Yeah.
Just this. So
Could you when next round happens, could you actively ask into it? Ask into how can I help you? Lower back, how can I help you? How do you want me to move? How do you want me to roar? How do you want me to lie? How do you want me to so you move around your body and and kind of let the not the pain but the area dictate how it can be moved. How can I soothe you? How can I help you? And I know that when you're standing as a question mark, there's not much movement, but it might be, smile or hyperventilating, or it might be, basking your hands, or it might be, and whatever thought comes up, you just do that. Just to indicate to the subconscious part of you that whatever you ask me to do, I do. If you said jump, I will ask how high. It's on that
yes,
level that the trauma is completely okay to be there. And whatever you ask me to do, I will meet. I will do, like you said, that yes, you are allowed to go out and get all the necessities, but not allowed to go out and socialize and do other. We're not done yet. And
right.
that very, very clear indication that there's something, more yet. It's really, really important. And I want to say to everybody that right now are sitting and going, but there is no I. There's no one that is asking him to. I know. We're dealing with trauma here. We need to meet all of this that needs to be met for us to completely let go and really be in that space of just being. But I also think it's been made very clear in everything that you have experienced that you're very good at staying with your direct experience, like you said, with going deeper and deeper and deeper into it and just staying with that.
I think that's crucial. I think also as a bit of a challenge, if someone has a response to saying there is no I here, if you are in an intellectual place where you're saying there's no I, you're super identified.
Yeah.
That's because if you're in those moments, in those periods when there's truly no sense of any, when it does fall off all the way and everything's gone for a short period of time, there's also the willingness that anything can come up. There isn't, and there's no fixed point where you stand and say, draw a conclusion. You don't draw a conclusion and say there's no I. You're up for whatever. You're just up for whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
And maybe and then maybe if you're saying no I, maybe look into what fear response is coming up, because it's a rejection. It's a fear of I don't want to experience that.
Yes.
This is unnecessary. Okay, sure. So what do from what point are you speaking?
Yeah.
If you're speaking from true no self, you would never say that.
Exactly. Yeah, beautiful. Exactly. Last question. You talked about the guilt of existence.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still present in you? Do you still have more to pick up from that?
No.
It's done.
Yeah. No. Now there's a curiosity of because I'll say presently, if I have to make a statement about it, I would say there's no longer identification with the old Ted. that group, that pack, so I won't say that all identification is gone, because clearly then the 10th fetter is broken. But there's still identification with the body. There's still probably there's some residual ways of thinking or habits, patterns that will need to, when they come up, need to be addressed. But more a curiosity of sort of, now what?
Yeah.
What do I like? Do
Yeah.
I, what is it? Do I even like the same things? Do I even like the same foods? But it's very curious into, like, how is this going to unfold? So that initial ball of fear of what's going to happen from here is gone, where you just go, this has led me all the way up to here. I didn't die. My gallbladder didn't shut down. I didn't have a stroke or a heart attack. And there's all these moments of just massive clarity. So what's next?
Exciting.
But without an expectation.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Amazing. Okay, before we end, is there anything I can do for you?
I don't think so.
Okay. You just write me if there is.
I will.
Okay. Amazing. Amazing. I can't wait for the next chapter. This was amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for doing this. I really, really love the honesty and the vulnerability and the authenticity and the not sugarcoating anything or pretending everything is great, or even pretending that you're at the end of the road or any of that, but just that pure being with whatever is. And yeah, I really, really love that. It's so valuable. So valuable.
You're welcome. And there was a sense last night as I was walking to the store, that there was some sincerity and authenticity in the whole teacher thing, or more wanting to help. Teachers are not so much a word anymore, but a wanting to help. And that stretched back a long time, because there's a natural love and compassion that comes up, especially when you see others suffering, right? Or parent others. But to have it shared this way, it initially seemed a little funny, and then to hear the reports back that it was actually helping people was a little strange. Okay, all right, well, that's, and then it just clicked. Last night as I was walking to the store, I'm like, this is my contribution.
Yes.
This is, and it's the exact opposite flavor of what I had hoped, because because in this contribution, I don't show any deep wisdom, the projected deep wisdom that I thought I was going to show. I don't show any lofty spiritual ideas, but I can show you the deepest parts of me, and the most vulnerable parts of me, and say that those are met with love, and that I love you, and you being, whether it's Pernilla or who's watching this, and then that love simply is. And it felt so good to just go, this can be my contribution. And then if I never said another word after we wrap up this series to anybody ever again, that would be enough.
I absolutely agree, because the biggest, I completely agree. It's a huge contribution to show people that even this can be loved. Even this can be, appreciated. Who are we to know that this is not the most beautiful thing that could ever happen? It's just, assumptions when we say that vomiting and shitting yourself is a bad thing. Who are we to know? Who are we to know?
Right.
Clearly, this was a very, very beautiful experience. It wasn't experienced like that when you were in it, but that's when we had the difference of opinion when we spoke. We're good. This is beautiful. but it really, really is. Even this can be loved. Even this can be loved. Even this part of you can be loved, and it's worth of loving. Yeah, and you're loved and you're safe. Isn't that great?
Yes. Yeah. That one doesn't come up as a sticking point anymore.
No, I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, thank you so much, my friend. I love this so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And keep me posted.
I sure will.
Okay, good.